Today, I want to talk about one of gaming's most debated topics, the legality of emulators and ROMs. And it's not quite as clear-cut as you might expect. Now, I'm going to talk about some legal things in this video, and I am not intending to serve this any sort of legal documentation to try to put you on a path to make any decisions of your own. And the reason being is, one, I don't know everything, and two, this is a huge gray area where, again, things are not as clear-cut as you might have perceived. Your assumptions probably are that emulators and ROMs are illegal, or if you've looked into this quite a bit, you might know that emulators, for the most part, actually are not. The emulator is the piece of software that will play the game, the ROM that is, but it's just that piece of software. It doesn't come bundled with any games. It's simply that piece of software that nowadays you can download on so much more than just a computer. Other modded consoles can run emulators, your phone can run emulators, and it's just expanded the realm of opportunity to play ROMs. But the real question is, are ROMs actually even legal in the first place? And the long-time assumption has been no. Obviously, it's a piece of copyrighted content, and you can't just simply steal that. Nintendo is very clear about this on one of their FAQ pages. Now, Nintendo is also the same company that's willing to sell you back on the Wii store a pirated copy of their own ROM, which of course isn't truly pirated because they owned it originally, but the fact that they were selling a copy that they got off of one of the popular ROM sites has always been absolutely hysterical to me. You see, emulation, I think, really became popular around the PlayStation 1 era. That's because while the PlayStation 1 could really push the graphical boundaries at the time for home consoles, PCs were also up there in that power sense as well. So there became some sort of discs that you could put in a PC that could install an emulator so that you could put PlayStation 1 games in your PC and play them. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the PlayStation 1 is still very relevant in terms of being sold commercially, and people are playing those PlayStation 1 games on their PCs. And it became this whole big deal where ultimately it was determined that the emulator itself is legal because it's a unique piece of software that was programmed, by a different group of people, separate from the original developers, and it was not stolen in any way in the sense that the ROM files themselves were. But ROMs have always been different, and while there are thousands, if not a million, different ROMs hidden somewhere out there on the internet on countless different websites that are constantly taken down and the new ones sprout up in their place, it's this ongoing cycle that we've seen go on for the last 10, 15, even 20 years, and ultimately you have all these real ROMs, then you also have these unique ROMs that are fresh, they're new things that were made by somebody in the community, or it might be an entirely new game. And obviously those ROMs, while they might run on, a Genesis or an SNES, they're a new game that somebody developed. Those obviously are legal if the person that created it said they're willing to give it away for free. Now the other type is the ROM hacks. You see these a lot with Pokemon. Now, while you may think this is an original game, it's not. It's a ROM hack of typically either Sapphire or Ruby, or Fire Red or Leaf Green. Now, those games rely on the two original engines in Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Ruby and Sapphire in order to play the ROM hacks. And because they rely on that, these are almost always considered illegal because they're using the original game's code and then just modifying it in some way. And then obviously the third type is just the original game, which, without much explanation, we've always assumed is illegal. Now, while I cannot find any true legal documentation that would prove this to be correct or incorrect, from what I've read, from what other people on the internet have said, which you can hardly even trust in the first place, but I can't find any true legal documentation on, is that anything found on archives.org is free game. So I went on archives.org and obviously could not find a single Nintendo game. And that makes it seem pretty legit to me. Nintendo would want all their stuff cleared off of that, and likely that's how it worked. So maybe it holds up the fact that everything on archives.org is potentially copyright free, go at it type of thing. So I took a look for one of my favorite classic games on archives.org, NBA Jam. And I actually found copies of NBA Jam on here, but only on the Game Gear, which obviously there are emulators out there for the Game Gear, But the fact of the matter is Sega still likes to sell some of their older classic games, but almost always those games are from the Genesis. They don't really ever do much as far as selling Game Gear games anymore, and that might be why they're just giving away the Game Gear games here on Archive.org. So you think, maybe there's just a collection of, older ROMs from obscure systems on here. Well, then my results for NBA Jam also included NBA Jam for the PlayStation 1, which to me seems like something that should be sold on the PlayStation Network store, and I ultimately took a look to see if that was the case. And I ultimately could not find it. Now, I can make assumptions that could be because Acclaim is closed, all the Acclaim stuff got given away, but that's not true because Acclaim, all their properties got sold to another company in the same way that THQ and all those other companies that closed down, Midway, stuff like that, they end up selling their properties to another company. So we would assume, I believe it is right now, EA is in possession of the NBA Jam property. So it shocks me that this is just simply out there on archives.org for anybody to download, especially because it's a PlayStation 1 game, so it's not as old or obscure as the Game Gear. Then I typed in one of my favorite franchises, Digimon, clicked the software filter, and ultimately found copies of all 3 Digimon World games, as well as the one-side sort of fighting game that came out for the PlayStation 1. Now, I know for certain at one point in time these were sold on the PlayStation Store, at least for the PSP, because I swear I remember playing these games on the PSP. Now, when I typed it in on the PlayStation Network Store, no results. So ultimately, I don't know what happened to these PlayStation 1 classics on the PlayStation Network Store, but it shocks me to see them just sitting here on archive.org being given away for free. It doesn't seem to add up. You would think Bandai would want to sell that content. They have it still, obviously they have the license to it. You would think they would want to sell it. So it makes me really question the legality of archive.org. So in order to try to learn more about the Internet Archive, I took a look at its About page, which mentions the fact that it's a 501c nonprofit organization and that anybody can upload content to it. And the fact that anybody can upload content to this makes me wonder how it's really any different than something like, say, Mega Upload back in the day. Now, I took another look at Reddit and discovered that apparently it's legal to download anything from Internet Archive according to this user on Reddit, which again is not the best legal advice. And they say, and they link the Wikipedia page, which states that it is considered an international organization of libraries and other organizations established to coordinate efforts to preserve internet content for the future. And apparently in 2007, the state of California began recognizing this as a library officially. And apparently the fact that it's a library makes anything on it be legal. But again, there has to be some sort of stopgate. There has to be somebody who's checking through this to ensure that no copyrighted content ends up on it. And the fact that I can almost guarantee that the Digimon ROMs should be copyrighted, it blows me away that that would seep through the cracks. But then again, like I said, Nintendo keeps a very tight hold on all of their content, and a simple search for Pokemon brings up no results of those games, except for this Pokemon Uranium, which I don't know enough about to know if that's a ROM hack or if that's an original game that somebody created. But regardless, it seems like, with the exception of the Digimon thing and the NBA Jam, that maybe this is checked through to some extent, but just simply the fact that anybody can download and upload content on this makes it seem a little bit insecure. But at the same time, apparently it is considered an official library, and without the whole return system, it's considered somewhere where you can go to potentially download this type of content for free. So if there's all kinds of, it appears to be PlayStation 1 and older ROMs available on this archive.org, then does that make ROMs be legal after all? Well, I'm not 100% sure, and I'll leave it up to you guys' judgment, but be sure to check out archives.org. Seems like a pretty cool source for a lot of interesting content. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next one.